The bold and the beautiful, retribution of a father ***. When news broke that Will Spencer had been held at gunpoint, something ancient and primal ignited in Bill Spencer. Not the tycoon. Not the media mogul. Not even the calculating empire builder. This was Bill the father, stripped of all pretense, stripped of decorum, burning with pure fury. The kind of fury that doesn't just demand justice, it seizes it with its own hands. The moment he heard Will's frightened voice recount what had happened, Bill's jaw clenched. Something inside him turned sharp and cold. He didn't yell. He didn't roar. He made one call. Then another. And then another. Within an hour, the full power of the Spencer Communications empire was pivoted in one direction, the hunt for Luna Nozawa. Luna had crossed a line no one was allowed to cross. Not with Bill. Not with his son. She had taken a gun. Whether it was hers or not, whether she pulled the trigger or not, she had been there, and Will had looked down the barrel of death. That was enough. It didn't matter why. It didn't matter how. Luna had become the target, and Bill would stop at nothing. He didn't go to the police. Not right away. He knew the system. Knew its speed. Knew its loopholes. Knew that due process was a concept often too slow and too polite for the kind of justice he needed. Instead, he activated something else. Something far more ruthless. A private network of investigators, ex-intelligence officers, hackers, corporate spies, legal sharks. People who owed him. People who feared him. People who worked off the record. They didn't ask questions. They didn't need to. When Bill said find her, they moved like predators. And when he said, don't let her breathe without me knowing, they watched her shadow. It wasn't long before Luna realized something was closing in. Her phone started acting strange. Her accounts were glitching. Her apartment got broken into, nothing was stolen, but everything was touched. The message was clear. She wasn't just being hunted. She was being dissected, slowly, meticulously, like a thread under a microscope. Friends stopped replying. Her car was towed for no reason. Her job at Forrester Creations suddenly went cold, calls unanswered, meetings cancelled. And then came the final blow, the restraining order. Bill had filed it not to protect Will, but to trap her legally. One move too close to any Spencer property, and she'd be dragged into court in chains. She was boxed in. Luna ran. Not because she was guilty, but because she was terrified. Bill didn't care about innocence. He cared about punishment. He wanted her behind bars. If not physically, then spiritually, mentally, emotionally. He wanted her broken. He wanted her to understand what it meant to threaten his family. And when Luna realized she couldn't run far enough, she tried to fight back. She tried to call RJ. To reach Steffi. To beg Lee for help. But doors slammed in her face. The Nozawa name was radioactive now, and no one wanted to touch her fallout. Meanwhile, Bill wasn't finished. While the law dragged its heels, he worked in silence to build what he called the steel cage, a web of civil lawsuits, contractual violations, immigration threats, even old juvenile records from Luna's past. Anything that could tie her up, weigh her down, corner her. If the police couldn't act fast enough, he'd build a case so airtight that she'd suffocate. Lawyers combed through her past like vultures. Photographs were leaked. Messages twisted. Witnesses bought. Whatever it took. Katie tried to intervene. So did Brooke. Even Ridge, despite his lifelong rivalry with Bill, warned him to slow down. You're going too far, they said. She's just a girl. But Bill wasn't hearing it. That girl pointed a gun at my son, he growled. There's no too far after that. And in the midst of this whirlwind, Will stayed silent. He didn't ask his father to do any of this. He didn't want vengeance. He wanted to forget. But every time he saw the headlines, Every time he saw Luna's face splashed across tabloids with captions like "Forrester in turn turns gun-toting maniac," the guilt grew. Because Will knew the truth. Luna hadn't meant to hurt him. That moment, terrifying as it was, had been a mistake. A setup. He remembered the panic in her eyes. The way her hands shook. The way she begged someone named Zen to explain. But none of that mattered now. Bill had made his move, and nothing would stop him. For Luna, the walls kept closing in. Her mother, Poppy, tried to help, but even she couldn't outmaneuver Bill's reach. Every legal avenue was blocked. Every attempt to clear Luna's name was drowned in noise. Bill's media empire controlled the narrative, and in that narrative, Luna was a reckless, unhinged threat to society. Her story didn't matter anymore. Only his did. And then, just when Luna thought it couldn't get worse, Bill made it personal. He sent her a message, not through text, not through court, but through action. Her childhood home in San Francisco, the place she'd gone to for refuge, was bought overnight. The tenants, family friends, were evicted without warning. And on the deed? Spencer Holdings. It was a message loud and clear, "There's nowhere to run." Steffi, seeing the carnage, finally stepped in. She met Bill behind closed doors. "You're not just punishing Luna," she told him. "You're making everyone afraid of you again. You're dragging this family into another war." But Bill didn't blink. "Let them be afraid," he said. "Fear keeps people alive." And then came the night when Luna, cornered and desperate, tried to turn herself in, not to the police, but to Will. She showed up outside the Spencer estate, shaking, crying, unarmed. She wanted to explain. She wanted to apologize. But the second she stepped onto the grounds, floodlights snapped on, alarms blared, and within moments, she was surrounded by private security. Bill arrived within minutes. He didn't scream. He didn't yell. He just looked at her like she was already gone. "You don't get to speak to my son," he said coldly. "You don't even get to look at him. You breathe because I let you. And the second I stop, you disappear." Luna was arrested that night, not by the police, but by a team of federal agents summoned by Bill's legal team under charges most couldn't even understand. Fraud. Endangerment. Intent to cause harm. None of them would stick, but that wasn't the point. Bill didn't want a conviction. He wanted time. Time to crush her spirit. But things don't stay buried forever. Slowly, cracks began to appear in Bill's perfect plan. A private investigator he hired turned whistleblower, revealing that key evidence had been planted. That Luna had been framed. That the gun wasn't hers. That the real culprit, the one who brought the weapon, was someone else entirely. And worse, that Bill had known. That he had chosen vengeance over truth. Suddenly, the empire he built to destroy Luna began to tremble. Lawsuits flipped. Journalists turned on him. Protesters camped outside Spencer Publications. And Will, watching his father's descent into obsession, finally spoke. On live TV, during a charity gala, he took the mic and said the one thing that shattered everything: "Luna didn't try to kill me. She tried to protect me. And my father tried to bury her for it." It was the sentence that cracked the world open. And it forced everyone, Steffi, Ridge, Katie, even Liam, to confront the cost of Bill's wrath. But it didn't break Bill. Not completely. Because in the end, even surrounded by doubt, with the press hounding him, with allies turning away, he still stood by one thing. "You threaten my son," he said, "and I will tear the world down to make you pay." And he meant it. Even if that world turned on him. While Bill Spencer waged his war like a man possessed, there were others watching. Others who had long memories, bitter grudges, and nothing left to lose. Sheila Carter stood at the edge of the chaos with a familiar gleam in her eye, the kind that had spelled destruction in more than one chapter of her sordid life. But this time, she wasn't alone. Deacon Sharp, her reluctant partner, stood beside her, torn between caution and curiosity. To Sheila, there was no question. Bill's rage was an opportunity. "You see that?" she said, eyes locked on the screen broadcasting Bill's latest tirade. "That's not a father defending his kid. That's a Spencer unraveling. And if there's one thing I've learned in this town, it's that betrayal isn't an accident with them, it's tradition." Deacon didn't answer at first. His history with Bill was long, bitter, and full of unfinished business. He hadn't forgotten how Bill once treated him like garbage, how he mocked him, shut doors in his face, used his power to keep Deacon at rock bottom. And Sheila? She didn't need much convincing. She had her own reasons to hate the Spencer dynasty, especially after all the near deaths, lies, and humiliations that traced back to the family's orbit. So now, while Bill tore through the city hunting Luna, Sheila and Deacon began their own game, one that wouldn't rely on brute force, but subterfuge. A quiet assault. A double strike meant to hit Spencer where it really hurt, reputation and power. The plan began small. Sheila suggested they stir the pot publicly. Plant whispers, rumors, fabricated leads. Deacon, drawing from his old prison contacts and his network through Il Giardino, began leaking false stories to smaller news outlets, insider claims about Spencer publications facing internal audits, anonymous tips about financial misreporting, carefully worded suggestions that Bill's unhinged behavior was a smokescreen for corporate collapse. "It doesn't even have to be true," Sheila grinned. "Just close enough to be believable. Let the media do the rest." And it worked. Within days, online forums were buzzing. "Is Spencer broke?" trended on tabloid blogs. Financial analysts started pulling old reports, questioning recent moves. A few even speculated that Bill's obsession with Luna was a distraction, an attempt to deflect attention from something bigger. But that was only phase one. While the gossip gained traction, Sheila and Deacon quietly slipped into phase two, infiltration. Deacon knew a bartender who once dated a junior financial advisor at Spencer Holdings. After a few drinks and a long overdue reconnection, the bartender agreed to play messenger. A forgotten password. A copied keycard. A single night inside the right floor of the Spencer building. That was all they needed. Deacon, always careful, never left fingerprints. Just logged in long enough to copy certain folders, spreadsheets, confidential budgets, shell company documents Bill thought were buried. Most of it was encrypted, but Sheila had contacts of her own. Not just hackers, but former accountants with grudges, people who knew how to crack open financial lies like eggs. What they found wasn't exactly a smoking gun, but it was enough. Several payments tied to offshore accounts. Discrepancies between what Spencer reported publicly and what they moved privately. A fund labeled Emergency Retention Disbursement, which looked suspiciously like a slush fund to silence legal threats. And above all, a cluster of silent transactions pointing to a real estate deal involving the eviction of multiple tenants, including a property connected to Luna's mother. That's when Sheila saw it, proof that Bill's vengeance wasn't just personal. It was premeditated. Financial. Strategic. And very possibly illegal. Sheila and Deacon had choices now. They could go to the press. They could go to the police. But neither of them trusted the system, not with Bill's fingerprints all over it. Instead, they went with something far more explosive, public pressure. Sheila anonymously leaked select documents to an investigative podcast known for exposing white-collar corruption. Not all at once, just enough to stoke fire. A $2 million wire to a Cayman Islands account. A list of severance payouts far too generous for terminated employees. And a single photograph of Bill Spencer in a private meeting with a city zoning commissioner, hours before that commissioner reversed a major housing decision that benefited Spencer Holdings. The story took off like wildfire. Suddenly, Bill wasn't the righteous father protecting his son. He was a billionaire under scrutiny. Every move he made, every statement about Luna, was now viewed through the lens of manipulation. Was he trying to bury her because she posed a threat to his empire? Was Will really in danger, or just a pawn? Journalists who once echoed Bill's soundbites began digging deeper. A few brave ones even mentioned Sheila's name, quietly wondering if she was back in play. Bill felt it. The tide was shifting. The media started to spin. Advertisers began calling Spencer publications with questions. Stockholders demanded meetings. Internally, executives started whispering about liability. Even Justin Barber, once Bill's right hand, began hesitating to defend him. "You can't fight a war on two fronts," he warned. "And you're not just fighting Luna anymore." Bill doubled down. He denied everything. Accused rivals of conspiracy. Claimed the documents were forged. But for the first time in years, the mighty Bill Spencer didn't look bulletproof. He looked hunted. And still, Deacon and Sheila weren't finished. Their next move was surgical. Deacon, using an alias, contacted a whistleblower law firm and floated the idea of an anonymous case against Spencer Holdings. The bait worked. Within days, attorneys began circling. Civil suits were being drafted. A grand jury was mentioned, quietly, behind closed doors. Even the SEC began sniffing around, asking for clarification on certain quarterly filings. All of it triggered by two people who had been cast out of polite society, two people who had nothing to lose. Meanwhile, Sheila watched it all unfold with cold satisfaction. She wasn't interested in justice. She wanted revenge. She wanted to see Bill bleed in the same way she had, socially, financially, psychologically. He thought he was untouchable, she told Deacon. "Let's show him what it feels like to drown." Deacon, more conflicted, wasn't as certain. He'd seen Bill destroy people, but he also knew this path had no return. Still, the damage was done. The trap had sprung. And now, even if they walked away, the wreckage would follow Bill for months, maybe years. That was the beauty of it, they didn't need to win. They just had to make sure he lost. As Bill scrambled to contain the fallout, Luna's story began to change in the public eye. Where once she was painted as a threat, now she was a possible victim. The story of a young intern smeared by a billionaire for reasons no one quite understood became the new narrative. Sympathy grew. Support rallied. And behind it all, pulling strings from the shadows, were two of the most dangerous outsiders the Forresters and Spencers had ever underestimated. Sheila and Deacon didn't need forgiveness. They didn't need redemption. All they wanted was to watch the mighty fall. And as Bill's empire began to crack under the weight of its secrets, they smiled. Because sometimes, chaos isn't born. Sometimes, it's engineered.